In business today, 3 things to know. First, out of the game and banned for life. The NBA commissioner tosses the book at the owner of the LA Clippers over racist remarks. Did the commissioner get it right? And how does the league move forward? We'll speak with a former NBA owner. Then, Texas goes hunting for business. New York fights back. California loses a big company. How the states are trying to lasso companies from each other with tax and other incentives. And we'll introduce you to Surgeons of Hope, doctors who travel around the world to save children from heart defects. Arise Exchange starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz. It's the basketball equivalent of the death penalty for Donald Sterling. Rookie NBA Commissioner Adam Silver handed down a sweeping verdict Tuesday afternoon following news that Sterling made racist comments to his girlfriend and confirmation that it was his voice on the tape recording. The NBA issued the following punishment. Effective immediately, Sterling is banned for the rest of his life from all LA Clippers and NBA activities. He cannot attend any NBA games, visit the offices of the Clippers, or make any business or player decisions regarding the team. He is also fined $2.5 million. And Commissioner Silver is urging the league's board of governors, made up of the league's owners, to force Sterling to sell the team. Here's a little of what Silver had to say at an afternoon news conference.
The views expressed by Mr. Sterling are deeply offensive and harmful. That they came from an NBA owner only heightens the damage and my personal outrage. Sentiments of this kind are contrary to the principles of inclusion and respect that form the foundation of our diverse, multicultural, and multi-ethnic league.
Prior to Tuesday's decision, there was already a long line of sponsors who had bailed out of their relationship with the Clippers. Among them, Carfax, State Farm, Kia, Virgin America, Red Bull, Mercedes, and a list of other big-name brands. We have 2 distinguished guests with us now. Former president and owner of the Philadelphia 76ers, and now owner of the St. Augustine Pirate and Treasure Museum, Pat Croce. And in a moment, we'll speak with sports and financial analyst from Oppenheimer, Stephen Colavito. But we're going to start with Pat. Pat, it's an honor to have you on the program today. Thank you for spending a few minutes with us.
Andrew, thanks for having me on the show.
So the first question is, did the commissioner get it right?
I think he got it absolutely right, Andrew. It's one thing to issue a fine of $2.5 million to a man who's worth $2 billion. That's like you getting fined $5. It's another thing to be banned for life from the NBA, from the arenas, from the practice facilities, from decision-making. But most importantly, and what I was really psyched about, is that he put his foot forward to say that he is going to urge the other owners to make Donald Sterling sell his team. I was shocked at that.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you, as a former owner yourself, how would you vote if you were on the board of governors?
Without a doubt, thumbs down.
You would vote to kick him out?
Get him out. Are you kidding me? There's no reason to keep him associated with the NBA with that sick, despicable comment.
Do you think that the commissioner in this case had basically polled the owners and got a buy-in for this decision? Because remember, this is an unusual situation where the commissioner is really working for for Sterling and the others.
You're right. I have attended the Board of Governors meetings for 5 years. During my tenure with the Sixers from 96 to 2001, on a thrilling journey, Andrew, from worst to first, I was there. So the commissioner does work for the owners, but more importantly, he keeps the owners in check and prevents them from killing themselves, because sometimes many of them are so dangerous in a sense where the way they spend money and they form the cap and other reasons that they check each other. Remember, these guys have monstrous egos. I was the pulper in the room. They're billionaires. You got Paul Allen and Richard DeVos and Mark Cuban and Donald Sterling's of the world. But no, this is really important. And I'm going to answer your question. I think Adam Silver, being a very intelligent man and, as you said, a rookie commissioner, only 3 months in office, that he did vet some of the owners. Not all of them, but I would assume that he vetted some of those owners in the executive committee that he trusts.
And boy, does he come out looking good, doesn't he? He comes out decisive, not insecure at all about taking this position. He was clearly in charge today, and one of the leading commissioners, I mean, you know, in the mode of his predecessor, I guess, and even Gary Bettman at the NHL, who have the ultimate decision here that the owners have to look to.
You know, he takes the hammer from David Stern, who I loved. I mean, these guys, Adam Silver's been under the wing of David Stern for quite a while, so he learned, and he put that hammer down. He used his authority to the letter of the law, the NBA Constitution and bylaws, and then he pushed it even further with that directive and that demonstrative effort in saying, oh, I love the question and answer. Someone said from the press, well, what if you don't get the 75% vote? He says, I will get that support.
Yeah, he said, I'm going to get the 75%. He doesn't have any doubt about it. You knew Sterling as a fellow co-owner. Any of this surprise you? Because I guess one of the questions about this is, where has the NBA been? This is an individual who certainly had a history of similar type behavior.
Well, Andrew, I did know Donald Sterling as a former owner, and as I said, attended the Board of Governors, the NBA All-Star Games, the Olympics. So I did know him. I didn't know him well. We didn't walk in the same circles. I was the pulper in that room. But I do believe that, you know, he's getting the punishment he deserves now. He was never guilty. He was never guilty before. So you can't issue a punishment from the NBA if you're not guilty. If it goes to the court of law with Elgin Baylor case or some of these other cases, Dunleavy case, or any other cases, whether they were with, I guess, the rents and apartments, that had nothing to do with the NBA. If he's not guilty, there's no way the commissioner is going to levy a fine or sanctions. If he's guilty, in this sense, he admitted that he said those racist, insensitive remarks.
And it was over for him at that point. Pat Croce, thank you so much.
My pleasure, Andrew. Continued success.
Thank you, sir. You too. Let's turn now to Stephen Colavito, who has his own thoughts about all of this. I want to turn it to the sort of the financial picture here. When the sponsors started bailing out, this game was pretty much over, wasn't it?
It was, Andrew, and you have to remember that with the NBA, the demographic with the NBA really is towards minorities. They have the largest percentage of minority players, the largest percentage of minority executives within the league, and they have minority ownership. So from a sponsorship perspective, that's the demographic that these sponsors are looking for. And so what Adam Silver did, and what Pat alluded to, is, you know, he works for the owners, but he protected the players, and he protected the franchise, and he protected sponsors today by making this very bold move.
Yeah, do you think that he has set sort of a new standard for the commissioner here? The commissioner's offices over the years in various leagues have gone from very strong to a little bit weak. It started with the first baseball commissioner sort of setting the tone, and baseball's commissioner has been probably a little bit weak over the years. Has he set a new bar?
I think what he did was amazing, because, you know, he's only got 3 months into his tenure as commissioner. And I think that it may kind of be a little bit of an earth-moving moment from the standpoint of him laying the law not to just players. You know, that there have been other commissioners that have kind of laid the law to players, but he's actually said, no, you know what, as an owner, your standards are even higher than the players. And I think that is really an unprecedented move. The only one that I can remember that's similar to this is Major League Baseball, back when Marge Schott made those incendiary remarks, and so Major League Baseball took some effort to remove her as owner.
But this was actually, I think, clearer cut. I mean, it seemed from a financial standpoint, what Silver did today was he closed the book, if you will. He drew a line.
Yeah. I'm sorry. You're absolutely. He had a PR nightmare on his hand. And you're absolutely right. He slammed the book. Didn't close it. He slammed the book on this issue to kind of cut the hemorrhage, so to speak, or put a tourniquet on the hemorrhage that was a PR problem for the NBA over the last 3-4 days.
And finally, you know, going through the rest of the playoffs then, you think this is going to ultimately benefit the league in the sense that the league as a whole sort of moved past this in just basically a day? In fact, if you go to the Clippers website, I think it has a slogan on there, "We are one today."
I think that as much as they could have closed it, it has. I think that it has changed the tone and the tenor of what was going on with the league. I also think that sponsors will now kind of sit and wait a little bit to kind of observe how this process moves through, as Pat was talking about earlier, whether or not the votes happen, and then ultimately as this thing moves through arbitration and how long it takes in order to get him removed. I think the sponsors will wait, but as fast as they could have kind of moved this process by, they've done that.
Okay, Stephen, thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew.
Turning out to the market, solid earnings news pushed stocks higher. We're going to have our earnings blitz report a little bit later in the program, but first, Let's take a look at the final numbers. Green across the board, second day in a row. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 86.63 to 16,535.37. The S&P 500 up about 9. And the NASDAQ up nearly 30 points to 4103.54. Commodities, gold closing down. Oil up to $101 and a couple pennies. The U.S. Federal Reserve has begun its monthly two-day meeting. Is it stay the course for Janet Yellen and company? Jim Kochan, who is the chief fixed income strategist with Wells Fargo Funds Management, is here on Arise Exchange. Jim, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So we have a two-day meeting. Are we going to expect any sort of change in policy here? Stay the course? What do you think?
Stay the course. No change in policy. The Fed's policy is to try to keep bond yields relatively low through their forward guidance, while at the same time they're cutting back on their asset purchases. And that's going to continue over the next several months. And this statement tomorrow will be along those lines.
Do they look at the earnings at all of what's been going on and say this is good, this is bad, or we're indifferent to it?
Well, I think they look at the broad mix of economic data, as Janet Yellen has said, which gives them a great deal of flexibility. They may look at earnings, but that's not high on their list of things that affect policy. Obviously, they're watching the employment figures, they're watching the inflation data, and housing data also.
Well, let's talk about housing data right now. We're starting to get some troubling signs in the housing market. Where do you think that is standing? Because there are reports that now that investors have done buying up houses, that mortgage rates are starting to rise, that the housing market, the true housing market, is coming out, and it doesn't look so hot.
It looks moderate, it seems to me. Housing is improving. Yesterday we had the pending sales data were actually pretty good. But then on the other side, the home sales, existing and new single-family homes were not very good, and housing starts are still well below where they were last year toward the end of the year. So we had bad weather. That obviously had an effect. We seem to be pulling out of that somewhat, but it's a very slow recovery. Much slower than in past cycles.
Economists are saying 2.5% to 3% growth for this year. Where are you coming in?
Well, we had been in the neighborhood of 3%. I think that still makes sense. First quarter is going to look very weak. Second quarter is off to a much better start. And as we get into the second half of the year, again, we're expecting housing to add to GDP growth. And I'm encouraged by the car sales. That's a pretty good indicator of what consumers are doing.
That's interesting, because we had on a couple of people yesterday who thought the auto sector was looking really terrible. But you're liking where the car sales are going.
Well, the seasonally adjusted annual selling rate have come back nicely from that January, February, weather-related swoon. And the overall selling rate, if it stays on average around, say, 15.5 million units, is actually pretty good.
You're a fixed income guy.
I am.
So what are you telling people who want to buy bonds? Are we going to see higher interest rates?
Well, we may see higher interest rates, but it may be 2 years from now.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, we should be investing for income, not safety, not defensively. We should be looking at those sectors that provide above average, or let's say better than Treasury, income, better than Treasury yields. Basically,
equities with dividends?
Equities with dividends, corporates, including high yield, and munis, because on an after-tax basis, municipal yields are quite attractive.
Interesting. So you like municipals. You think that the risk of municipal bankruptcies, sort of, we're getting out of that area?
I think it's very low. Detroit obviously was something that shook up many investors' confidence in the muni area unnecessarily. And Detroit is something of a special case in that basically their tax base has eroded over time. Not very many other areas face those kinds of problems. And the fiscal health, generally, in the United States,
is starting to improve.
The fiscal health of state and local governments has been improving for 2 years now.
Tax base looking
exactly,
better.
Exactly.
Jim Kochan, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Coming up, earnings news from Twitter, eBay, and more. And later, state versus state in poaching companies. You're watching Arise Exchange.
I think news does make people put things in black and white terms, just so that they have a dividing line between what their viewers like and dislike.
When they see a person of color, they either think that they're not going to do anything, they're either on drugs, or they got pregnant at an early age. And I just want to say that that's not true.
It tends to reflect more the interests of the upper income people and the upper income interests.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Time now for our business ticker. Stories making news around the world. Move over, heart bleed. There's a new bug in town. A flaw in Microsoft's commonly used Internet Explorer browser has reportedly been exploited by hackers. Internet Explorer version 6, the version with the security problem, is used on an estimated 55% of all PCs, meaning the bug could target up to 300 million users. Microsoft said the issue allowed hackers to take complete control of targeted computers, including monitoring use and installing software. The attacks so far have affected U.S. firms in the defense and financial sectors. A lawsuit worthy of the final frontier. Elon Musk, the owner of private space company SpaceX, is suing the U.S. Air Force over a contract awarded to Lockheed Martin and Boeing. Musk says the government could have saved $1 billion if it had considered other bids. Musk alleges the long-term contract to purchase 36 rocket cores from a joint venture between Lockheed and Boeing wasn't presented to any other private space companies. There's good news for frequent international travelers. Security checks are about to get a lot easier and go a lot faster. The U.S. Transportation Security Administration is expanding its pre-check expedited screening program. This means international passengers with pre-check boarding passes can go through regular metal detectors, not the full body scanners. Pre-check travelers can also keep their shoes and belts on, and they can keep liquids and laptops in their bags. Easy living for them. Without all the difficulties of regular security, these lines are expected to go about twice as fast. The competition for jobs has become intense among states, with some engaging in bold marketing campaigns and bidding wars to pull companies into their region. Texas Governor Rick Perry appears in television ads touting Texas as business-friendly with low taxes and less regulations. Meantime, New York has launched its own campaign to get companies to move to the Empire State. For Texas, it is paying off. This week, Toyota said it would move its U.S. headquarters from California to the Lone Star State. Here's a clip from the two commercials.
This is Governor Rick Perry. In Texas, we have conservative leadership. In Illinois, it's liberal. There's a big difference. In Texas, we have the nation's highest job growth, affordable energy, fair and predictable legal system, and lower taxes.
The new New York is open. Open to innovation, open to ambition, open to bold ideas. That's why New York has a new plan. Dozens of tax-free zones all across the state. Move here, expand here, or start a new business here and pay no taxes for 10 years.
To talk about how some states are successfully luring businesses is Alan Adamson, a managing director for Landor Associates, a global brand consulting firm. Adam, thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
So it's sort of interesting about these ads is Rick Perry isn't just saying how great his state is. He is running ads in other states saying how lousy those states are. Effective?
It's competitive advertising. You make yourself look better by poking at the other guy.
And is this working out, or is there a little bit of some state pride going on with some of these companies?
It's a little bit political, Republican, Democrat, state pride, culture. Usually competitive advertising is not the best way to build a brand because people get confused as to who said what and who really stands for what.
Why is it really new for the states to be competing with each other in this respect? It feels like it's new.
Yeah, it's gone on for a long time. It's getting more sophisticated and more complicated because there's never just a simple come here or come there. It's a lot of issues, tax issues, education issues. But in a competitive world, every business moving into a state makes a difference.
And when it talks about businesses, these ads, I imagine, are for smaller businesses. Right? Is Toyota in California saw this ad and say, hey, we're going to Texas?
Unlikely. These are very long-term, complicated decisions. Most of them are targeting smaller startups to try to generate some entrepreneurial energy.
Has it been effective here in New York?
I think it's been effective in New York. Most people think the tech valley is growing, the tech Silicon Alley. Not fast enough, but it's all about entrepreneurial growth. The big companies are not growing as fast as the smaller companies. So getting startups is key.
Okay, so from a branding perspective, as an expert, you're going to advise a state. What are the things that you're going to try to tell them to do? You don't like the idea of competitive advertising. You like sort of touting your own.
Yeah, keep it simple and stay focused. Keep your message. If you try to tell people everything about the state that's good, from we have apples to rivers, nothing will get through. You got to pick your core theme, and stick to that.
Does has there been, in your sense, any backlash from these ads? Because it is strange as a New Yorker to see Rick Perry. I mean, New Yorkers don't really think of themselves like Texans, right? And so here they feel like somebody is coming in and almost invading.
Right. I think to some extent a lot of it's invisible. But when the Governor Perry says, "I want to debate you, Andrew Cuomo," then it becomes different than, "Let me tell you why you should come to Texas." Then it becomes, he said, I said, you said. It gets confusing.
If you're advising Governor Cuomo, who is likely going to run for president, and Rick Perry, who is likely going to run for president, maybe, would you say to Governor Cuomo they should do this debate?
Definitely don't do the debate. Stick to your story. Focus on what your strengths are. Don't get into a mudslinging contest.
It's also hard to do the debate in New York because whatever progress there has been taking, New York is clearly a less tax-friendly, a less regulatory-friendly area than Texas. Of course, it's location, location, location. You may want to be in New York.
Cuomo's stance is not about taxes. It's about incentive for startups, tying it to education. Quality of the workforce is not all about taxes. Companies make decisions based on the employee base. And who has the best employee base? Texas or New York, they're different. So it's not one-dimensional about taxes. There are many factors that go into it.
You know, something interesting you just brought up is I don't hear in these ads sort of the education component of it, about the workforce. You know, Rick Perry's been talking about regulations, and even the startup New York has been talking about taxes.
Yeah, so taxes is one dimension, quality of labor, quality of life. Will people want to live there? How will the commute be? You know, how complicated would technology be? What are the long-term benefits? So,
do you think that the ads are actually effective in pulling businesses, or do you think it's more of a political statement and that what's really effective in pulling businesses is exactly what you just talked about, where people want to live and taxes, et cetera?
I think it's probably a little of both. To some extent, both governors have national ambitions, looking for a platform to stand on. Job creation and job growth is a proven one, and they're both going at it from their own vantage point.
And what do you think of the future of this? Is if you're Illinois, for example, who just got a shot over the bow from the governor, do you fight back? You go to Texas and buy some ads, and is that a good use of taxpayer money?
Questionable, because some of the advertising is going to work, some of the advertising is not going to work. You got to figure out what's your story, and if Illinois says a good story, they should get it out there. But just saying, "Hey, look at me too," is probably not going to work.
Okay, Alan Adamson from Landor Associates. That's
pleasure,
fun.
Andrew.
Thank you.
Take care.
We'll talk again to see how these things work out. Now we're going to go back to some earnings news that we had this afternoon. Despite the market closing up on strong earnings reports, it wasn't all good news. Merck says profits jumped up this quarter. The U.S. drug maker reporting $1.7 billion in profits. Web giant eBay and Twitter, however, did not fare as well. eBay saw a net loss of $2.3 billion for this quarter, while Twitter says that it broke even. Coming up, what happens when you don't pay a $6 tax bill, a $6 tax bill? Our favorite person of the day will seize your home. You're watching Arise Exchange.
I think news does make people put things in black and white terms, just so that they have a dividing line between what their viewers like and dislike.
When they see a person of color, they either think that they're not going to do anything, they're either on drugs or they got pregnant at an early age, and I just want to say that that's not true.
It tends to reflect more the interests of the upper income people and the upper income interests.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Time now for our favorite person of the day, when we pick one person who grabbed our attention and not for the right reasons. Today, it is a small-town judge in Pennsylvania who ordered a widow evicted from her home because she failed to pay $6.30 in taxes. Judge Gus Quietus of Beaver County says Eileen Batista had plenty of notice that the county was putting her home up for auction because she owed back taxes totaling $235. Well, she paid the $235, but did not pay the $6.30 in interest that had accrued. The judge said she had noticed that her home was being sold and did not respond. So the county sold the house, valued at $280,000 for just $116,000. That money will go to Battisti, minus, of course, the $6.30, which the county will take. County lawyer says the county never wants to see someone lose their home, but hey, people need to pay their taxes. For the record, we think it probably cost the county more than $6.30 to hold the auction in the first place. Battisti's lawyer says she was dealing with her death of her husband and missed the notices. and so she will appeal. So Judge Gus Quietus, whether he was just following the law or not, is our favorite person of the day. Next, the doctors who perform life-saving heart surgeries in some of the poorest areas in the world. Our corner office is next here on Arise Exchange.
I don't think the television news in the United States reflects the diversity of the world. I don't think it does a great job of even reflecting diversity of the United States.
When you are watching TV, you don't really see a lot of different cultures. There are plenty of other places that people might not even know about.
We are living in a global culture, and you cannot hide news that is happening when there's so much social media.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
In tonight's corner office, on a mission to save children in need with one surgery at a time. That's the focus of a group known as Surgeons of Hope, an organization that provides life-saving heart surgery to children who lack the resources for proper care in many of the most remote areas around the world. Charles Catherine is the executive director, and he joins us now to talk to us about it. Charles, how did the idea of this get started?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Andrew. And no, back in the 70s, when we thought of this issue, which, you know, heart conditions for children in developing countries is a leading cause of mortality. And in the 70s, they thought that the issue was to bring back those children to America or Europe to be operated, and we thought it was not efficient. So Surgeons of Hope started 14 years ago, and we decided to go there in developing countries.
And go where the patients were.
Where the patients were, and to help them by building facilities, heart centers, sometimes from scratch.
Is the challenge in these areas lack of training of the doctors, or is it lack of money for the most modern equipment?
It's a bit of both, but our priority is obviously to form the doctors. The equipment, we can find it thanks to many American corporations, but the issue, is to form the doctors.
And so how do you recruit the doctors here? Doctors from all around the world, basically?
Yes, we're very fortunate. I mean, I'm French, and we have lots of French doctors, but we're an American organization, and we have lots of American hospitals that are with us and that send their best surgeons to our heart centers.
You do a lot of work in Africa, for example. How big of a problem is pediatric heart problems?
So, in Africa or in Latin America, where we work as well, pediatric surgery is very needed. It's the leading cause of mortality for children. And about 1% of every child is born with congenital heart problem. And if they're not operated, they might die. So we decided that it was a priority, and we need to help those governments. And we do so by building those facilities and forming the doctors.
And for the most part, are the governments receptive to this? Because there's obviously many different governments in Africa and across the country, and some more friendly to their people than others.
Well, that's one of the main factors that we take in consideration when we decide to go to a country. And we are fortunate in Africa. We worked in Senegal and Mozambique, and it was very, very fruitful. In Nicaragua right now, in Latin America, it's also very efficient, and it's impossible without good governance.
How is the organization supported?
Well, we have many corporations that back us, Edwards Life Sciences, among others. And we are fortunate also to have lots of supporters, and then invite your viewers to go on our website to join the crowd. And so that's how we work.
When you joined the organization, you recently took over, I believe. What sort of struck you about the mission?
Yeah, I started 4 months ago. I'm very excited, actually. And I felt that we were doing a great job for the missions, but in terms of communication, we were not as good as we should be. So now, you know, I'm very glad to be here, and it's very important for the people to support organizations such as ours.
And to hear about them.
And to hear about them, because we need to raise awareness, and people need to understand that, yes, here, surgery is something we take for granted.
We only have about 30 seconds left, but the question is, ultimately, how do you get these countries to have the resources to do this themselves? So this issue is never going to go away, but that's something you want to get to.
Exactly. We're trying to solve the problem. We help them to build the centers and form the doctors, and when we leave after 4 or 5 years, we leave a heart center that's functioning and sustainable. At Surgeons of Hope, we believe that what matters is not what you bring, but what you leave behind. And we help all those countries to be self-sufficient.
Okay. Charles, Catherine, thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
and we'll
Andrew.
put your website up so everybody can see it. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Next week here on Arise Exchange, we take you to the World Economic Forum in Africa, in Abuja, Nigeria, where we'll bring you the latest news and interviews of leaders from around the world. Let's take a look at the final numbers here on Wall Street. Once again, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, S&P 500, and the NASDAQ all closing up here in the green. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Thanks for watching Arise Exchange. We'll see you again tomorrow.